one of the reasons why this call interested me is because I think I'm often afraid of silence. So I've been on a couple of silent things before, but then you just hear the noise in your head like louder and louder. So that's one observation I've had of silence previously. But the slowing down bit has become more interesting since listening to you, because I've often had this kind of visible pull to slow down, like seeing it as an image in my head of like wanting to just be on one of those American rivers, like on a raft that's going really slowly, not on a white water bit of water, but on when it's really calm and slow and you can just relax, like you say. And I remember years ago hearing or seeing a quote, I think it was the Dalai Lama maybe, but it was if you have to hurry, hurry slowly. And I thought, what on earth does that mean? And so while you were talking, what came to my mind is that I'm a parent of emerging teenagers that one of the most pressurizing times of the day is getting out of the house in the morning on the school run. Right. And so when there's a time limit, it just feels normal to speed up. Like, so I'm kind of curious that, is it even possible to sort of find that place of sort of slowing down when everything in you is kind of driving you to speed up? Because the speeding up never really helps because it's really stressful, right? I'm kind of curious, could I even relax with the deadline of the school run in the morning? I'm not sure. And I didn't know if you had any, like, because you can't make yourself slow down, right? And you can't make yourself have an insight, but I just didn't know if you had any thoughts about that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So I love your curiosity. That's going to really help you in the answer to that. And what came to mind when you were talking just before you asked that question was, yeah, of course, we don't drive 70 miles an hour and then stop. It takes a minute, right? We have to slow down. And you pointed to that there's a slowing down. So there's not from here with, like you said about, me too, I've done meditations where actually the noise gets louder. So that puts you off. But actually that's because I was trying to go from really, really, really loud, but distracting myself from the loudness, to still, and ignoring the fact that it may take time to slow down. And actually from 70 down to 60 down to 50, that might be a more comfortable place for me to be, because then from 50 I know how to get to 30 or to 20. So that's what occurred to me when you were talking then, and I think that could help you with your question. The curiosity of, is it even possible? I mean, the answer is yes, but it has to come from you. And how do you get there? Well, you get there by being curious about that and wondering about that and seeing, could I slow down a little? And getting the children ready for school is not that much different from having to get the tax return in on time or write a bid by a certain deadline. Deadlines are deadlines, right? And so it's not, well, let's just ignore deadlines. It's more like what you were saying, Katy, about what happens if my mind slows down a little. And if that happens, does that help me? And just playing with it in your own life, and let us know.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Because I probably hadn't even occurred to me that you've got to slow down in small steps.
Nice.
I just was expecting myself to be able to find peace instantly.
That's right. But you know what? It had occurred to you. it's just like we do. It's so easy to overlook our own wisdom, because you're the one who said it. I only repeated back what you said. So I think you're onto a winner there.
I do a lot of video editing, Zooms, webinars, and all sorts of things. So I have an overexposure to a lot of people's ums and ands and isms and ifs and buts. And my partner had a specific one a few years ago. We didn't have much home time. I was doing night shifts and she was working day shifts, and it was a lot of it. So she felt rushed to tell me these stories of everything that had happened during the day. And then he said, and then she said, and then, oh my God, I can't believe it, but he said this, and then she said this, and then he said that. You wouldn't believe what the manager said, over and over and over again. And it was quite cute, but also terrifyingly, I can't listen to this anymore. But I'm really glad that you said that about thinking too, because I hadn't actually made that connection. And it's recently I can connect with this, because most of my best conversations or favorite conversations with my partner are when my mind isn't racing a million mile an hour, which it usually is. And when it is, I'm irritated very, very easily, short fused. I'll come home, the journey home, the best mood in the world, can't wait to get in. I'll pick them up something sweet on the way back home. And I get in and boy, something simple irritates me. I'll snap, she snaps, and all of a sudden 5 minutes ago in the car I was in a great mood, 5 minutes ago she was at home in a great mood, and now we're not in a great mood. Yeah, but when we were lay on the bed last night just dozing off and chatting, and nothing had gone on, it wasn't an eventful day or anything special about it, but I was in a really listening space, and my mind wasn't racing a million mile an hour. I wasn't thinking about any of my projects. I wasn't thinking about what needs to be done in the house or what she needs to do or what I need to do. I just lay there, and I don't actually think I spoke much, but she didn't care. She wasn't, it wasn't like she wasn't thinking either. Oh, why are you not speaking much, or why this or why that? It just gave her a space, because she clearly needed it at the time, to have freedom of speech. And so we chatted, and she would say a lot, and it was really interesting, really relevant, and I might have a response or might not, and then there'd be a few moments of silence, and then she would speak again. She has ADHD, so it's very quick for her to next conversations. And that was a really, really good conversation, because the thinking wasn't million mile an hour, not just the speaking. So yeah, really, really, really good to hear that.
Brilliant. That's such a great example of being present, and absolutely right. When our minds are a million miles an hour, of course we can't hear anybody else. Of course we're quick to temper or irritation, because we can't, the speeds are different, and it's like a gear clash. I've got to listen to that, but I can't quite listen to that because I'm still listening to what's going on in my head. And then being able to see the awareness of, oh, hey, when my mind's not racing, we can have this deep connection, and it might even be exactly the same stories, but you found them interesting, because when we listen from that quieter space, people become more interesting, because we're interested, because we're not fighting with what's going on in our head. It's not fighting for attention. So I love that. I love that you see that. That will only help with more deeper conversations, and also it will help with being able to know when you're not in the space to listen, and being able to say that, I actually, my head's full. I can't hear right now. I remember when I was working from home all day, and my husband would come home and he'd want to have time, he'd want to get in and be at home and settle down and have a drink and go for a wash and orientate himself back to the home. And when I learned about listening, I realized that for him to listen to me, I had to listen to where his space was. And so actually I didn't try to tell him all about my day at that moment, because I knew that where he was at was wanting to just get into the home situation, and then he could hear me. But it can work both ways.
I was going to ask about that actually. Is there ways that anybody is aware of how they can get into a more listening space if they're aware of it? That's the other problem, awareness, because you might not even be aware that that's what's happening at the moment. So it sounds like he was getting out of work head, getting into home head, and he was aware that that was a process that needed to happen for him to have more enriching conversations or enriched conversations.
Yeah.
So are there other methods? Are there other things that you're aware of? Yeah, I mean, grilled, but I think that's a really good one.
Your own awareness will help you with that. So the fact that you have now become aware of that, you'll get insight around that, because you can't, everyone could share, oh, I do this or I do that, or here's a thing to do. And it may not be appropriate or may not be perfectly right. But what you'll get is, because you now have awareness, you'll have more bespoke insight that will suit your situations. It's almost like awareness is the only thing we need, because everything else follows.
I've just had a little bit of an insight listening to everybody. An area I've really struggled with is that my husband is quite non-verbal, as in he doesn't like to chat a lot. He's quite silent a lot of the time, and that sort of tends to send me into a freak out space, because I like talking and conversation. That's how I feel I connect. And I've really struggled with, how do I connect when he doesn't want to say anything and there's nobody to listen to because he's not speaking? So how am I supposed to listen when he's not speaking? Anyway, it just tweaked that. It's not about listening to him, it's about listening back into myself, and about the curiosity part of it and the slowing down part of it. That if I just even notice that I'm speeding up when he's silent, that I can turn the listening back into me, start slowing down again, and just get a little bit curious about the fact that, oh, this thing's happening again where I freak out when he's not talking. Because the connection is, it just tweaked that the connection is the connection back to me and my heart. And then in that space, I'll know how to respond to his silence, and it won't all seem like such a big deal that it's always seemed like. So I really appreciate all the conversations we've had. Don't think I'd have recognized that otherwise.
I love that. And I love that you appreciate the conversation. But the fact that you slowed down is what helped you to see that. That came from you and from your own quiet. And so I invite you and encourage you to acknowledge that. I've really found that when we can see where it comes from, and we can acknowledge where it comes from, and I'd even go so far to be grateful from where, what we see, we see more, or we see the depth of that. That may look like a tweak, I think you called it, which is absolutely brilliant. But there's the shift that's happened behind that tweak. It's like, when a boat or a ferry goes past And then there's this ripple effect of the water, which carries on for quite some time. It could be that you're seeing the big splash, but actually there's all this ripple going on behind that you may not even recognize as being related to what you just saw. And the access to that, or the nurturing of that, is through acknowledging it and seeing it for what it is, and acknowledging yourself. So I'm so pleased that you shared that. Thank you.